dying dog walks 200 miles through impossible terrain to find the man who abandoned him. His paws bleed, his body fails, but he never stops, because dogs don't understand betrayal. They only understand love. And when he finally reaches his destination, what happens next will shatter every assumption you have about loyalty, sacrifice, and what we owe the souls who love us unconditionally. Why did the owner leave him? How did the dog survive the journey? And what truth will be revealed when they finally come face to face? If you believe that dogs carry a soul that protects, heals, and transforms lives, subscribe to The Soul of Every Dog. We share powerful stories every day that prove why dogs are more than pets, they're family. Like this video if you've ever felt a dog save you in ways words can't explain, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Let me tell you how a dog named Captain proved that love doesn't die, even when the body does. Michael Torres woke at 4:47 a.m. to the sound of his wife vomiting in the bathroom. He stopped checking the clock months ago, but his body had developed an internal alarm for Elena's bad nights. He threw off the covers and padded down the hallway of their small Albuquerque house, past Sophia's bedroom, where their 16-year-old daughter pretended to sleep through her mother's suffering. The bathroom door was cracked open. Elena knelt in front of the toilet, her body heaving though there was nothing left to bring up. She'd been too nauseous to eat dinner or lunch. The chemo had stolen her appetite along with her hair, her energy, her future. Michael knelt beside her and gathered her hair back what was left of it, thin and brittle beneath the scarf she wore even to bed. She was shaking, not from cold, though the house was freezing because they turned the heat down to save money. She was shaking from the effort of staying alive. "I've got you," Michael whispered, one hand on her back, feeling each vertebra through the thin nightgown. She'd lost 42 pounds since the diagnosis. He knew the exact number because he weighed her every morning, tracking her decline with the same precision he used to track their mortgage payments and medical bills. "I'm sorry," Elena gasped between heaves. "I'm so sorry. Don't apologize, mi amor. Never apologize." But she did apologize, every time. Because Elena Torres has spent her 41 years taking care of everyone else, their daughter, her elderly mother, the kids she taught at the elementary school where she'd worked for 15 years, and now she couldn't even keep water down. She apologized for being sick, for the medical bills, for dying. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctor had said the words 6 months ago in an office that smelled like antiseptic and despair. 6 to 9 months with aggressive treatment. Maybe a year if they were lucky. Michael had held Elena's hand and watched his wife's face crumble as she did the math. Sophia would be 16. Just 16. And Elena would miss everything: graduation, college, wedding, grandchildren. An entire future erased by mutated cells and bad luck. They'd started treatment immediately. Chemotherapy every 2 weeks. Radiation 5 days a week for 6 weeks. Experimental drugs that cost $8, $000 per dose, and weren't covered by insurance. Elena had fought like hell, showing up to every appointment, even when she could barely stand. She lost her hair in clumps, her appetite completely, her ability to work within 3 months. But she fought, and it wasn't working. The tumors were growing, the cancer was spreading. The doctors had started using phrases like palliative care and making her comfortable instead of treatment plan and remission. Michael helped Elena back to bed at 5:15 a.m., got her settled with water and anti-nausea medication that probably wouldn't work. He kissed her forehead, her skin was paper thin and hot to the touch, and went to the kitchen to make coffee he couldn't afford but needed to function. Captain was waiting by the back door, his German Shepherd face pressed against the glass, watching Michael with those dark, intelligent eyes that seemed to understand everything. The dog had been Elena's shadow for 8 years, adopted from a shelter when Sophia was 8 and begging for a puppy. They'd gone in looking for something small and manageable and walked out with a 70-pound shepherd mix with scars on his muzzle and fear in his eyes. "Someone hurt him bad," the shelter worker had said. "He's been here 4 months." Nobody wants a scared dog with a past. Elena had knelt down in front of the cage, extended her hand slowly, and spoken in Spanish words Michael couldn't hear, but Captain seemed to understand. The dog had pressed his nose against her palm through the chain link, and something had passed between them. recognition, understanding. Two souls who knew what it was like to be damaged. They'd brought him home that day, named him Captain, because Sophia was going through a superhero phase and insisted he needed a hero name. The dog had been skittish at first, flinching at raised voices, hiding during thunderstorms. But Elena had been patient. She spent hours sitting with him, speaking softly, letting him learn that not all humans hurt, not all hands hit. By the end of the first month, Captain slept on a bed next to Elena's side. By 6 months, he followed her everywhere, to the kitchen, the bathroom, the backyard. By a year, he'd become her guardian. When Sophia's teenage friends got too loud, Captain would position himself between Elena and the noise. When Michael came home stressed from work, Captain would intercept him, demanding attention, until Michael's blood pressure dropped. And when Elena got sick, Captain had known before any tests confirmed it. 3 months before the diagnosis, the dog had started acting strange. He stopped leaving Elena's side. When she sat down, he sat pressed against her legs. When she went to bed, he abandoned his own bed to lie on the floor beside her. When she cried in the bathroom before they knew why she was crying, Captain scratched at the door until she let him in. He knows, Elena has said, scratching behind his ears, "Don't you, boy? You always know." Now, 6 months into treatment that was failing, Captain maintained his vigil with even more intensity. He barely ate, lost weight alongside Elena as if trying to carry her burden, whimpered when she was in pain, even when she tried to hide it, howled when the ambulance came to take her to the ER for the 3rd time. Michael let Captain out into the backyard, watched the dog do his business quickly and returned to the door, eager to get back to Elena. Michael gave him breakfast, fresh water, and a few minutes of attention Captain tolerated, but clearly didn't want. The dog's eyes kept drifting toward the bedroom, toward his person. "I know, boy," Michael said quietly. "I want to be with her too." He checked the time. 5:47 a.m. He had to leave for his first job at 6:30, work a construction site until 3 p.m., come home, shower, spend an hour with Elena and Sophia, leave again at 5 for his overnight security job, come home at 2 a.m., sleep 3 hours, start over. He'd been doing this for 4 months, since Elena had to quit teaching and their household income got cut in half. They'd burned through their savings in the first 6 weeks of treatment, maxed out their credit cards buying medications insurance wouldn't cover, borrowed $15,000 from Michael's brother David in Colorado, a loan they'd never be able to repay. And still, it wasn't enough. The bills kept coming, each envelope a small knife wound, $4, $200 for an ER visit, $12,000 for a single round of chemo, $800 for anti-nausea medication that barely worked. Their insurance had a yearly out-of-pocket maximum of $18,000, which they'd hit in February. Everything after that should have been covered. Except insurance companies don't like paying for experimental treatments, and they really don't like paying for treatments that aren't working. Elena's oncologist had recommended a new drug protocol, something cutting edge being used at MD Anderson in Houston. It might give her another 6 months, maybe a year. Insurance denied it, called it not medically necessary. Michael had appealed 3 times, spent hours on the phone with representatives who sounded sympathetic but did nothing. The appeals were all denied. The drug cost $8,000 per dose. She needed it once a month. Michael had tried everything, started a GoFundMe that raised $3, $400 enough for 1 dose, applied for grants from cancer charities, got denied because their household income was technically above the poverty line. Never mind that medical bills had driven them into debt deeper than any pit. Looked into medical trials. Elena didn't qualify because her cancer had already spread too far. He was failing to save his wife, failing to provide for his family, failing at the one job that mattered most, keeping them together. And now the bank has sent the final notice. 30 days to pay $12, 847 inches back mortgage payments, or foreclosure proceedings would begin. Michael had missed 4 months of payments, using that money to keep Elena in treatment. He thought he could catch up, thought the overtime would be enough. He'd been wrong. Michael sat at the kitchen table with bills spread before him like accusations. Mortgage, $1, 847 past due. Credit cards, $47,000. Total balance, minimum payments he couldn't make. Medical bills, $89,000. And climbing. Utilities, overdue. Car payment, overdue. Everything was overdue or past due or about to be disconnected. He'd failed. His phone buzzed. A text from his brother David. Mike, that job, offer is still open. Construction supervisor, $85K divided by year plus benefits. Denver has a great cancer center. Fresh start. Think about it. Michael stared at the message. David had been offering for months a way out, a chance to start over in Colorado where the cost of living was lower and the wages were higher, where maybe Michael could work one job instead of two, where Elena could see better doctors at the University of Colorado Hospital. There was just one problem. The apartment David had found for them had a strict no pets policy. And even if it didn't, the pet deposit was $500 they didn't have. The breed restrictions excluded German Shepherds. The lease was for a small 2-bedroom that barely had room for people, let alone a 70-pound dog. Michael looked at Captain, who had finished his breakfast and was now sitting by the hallway, waiting to return to Elena's bedside. The dog was 8 years old, healthy, loyal. He'd been Elena's constant companion through hell, never wavering, never complaining. He loved her with a purity that put Michael's own love to shame. And Michael was going to have to get rid of him. The thought made him sick, made him hate himself. But what choice did he have? He couldn't save Elena and save their home and keep the dog. Something had to give. He told himself it was temporary, just until they got settled in Denver, just until Elena's treatment stabilized, just until he could afford a bigger place that allowed pets. He told himself a lot of lies that morning. At 6:45 a.m., Sophia emerged from her bedroom dressed for school, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, her mother's eyes staring out of her 16-year-old face. She'd grown up too fast these past 6 months, stopped going to friends' houses, quit the volleyball team, came straight home after school to help with her mother's care. How is she? Sophia asked, pouring herself coffee Michael really wished she wouldn't drink. Rough night. She's sleeping now, Sophia nodded, accepting this like she accepted everything else with a calm that broke Michael's heart. I'll check on her before I leave. Soph, we need to talk. Something in his voice made her set down the coffee cup. What's wrong? Uncle David found us an apartment in Denver. I got the job. We're moving in 2 weeks. Sophia stared at him. Mom can't travel. She can barely get out of bed. We'll get an ambulance. Medical transport. Uncle David's already researching the best way to... What about Captain? Michael had known this question was coming, had rehearsed his answer a dozen times. It still came out wrong. The apartment doesn't allow dogs. Then we'll find a different apartment. We can't afford, so we're just giving him up? Sophia's voice rose, losing that careful calm. Mom's dog, the dog that's been with her through everything, is temporary. Just until... Don't lie to me, Dad. I'm not a child. Sophia's eyes filled with tears she angrily wiped away. You're abandoning him. Just like you're abandoning this house and this city and everything Mom knows because it's easier than fighting. Sophia, that's not fair. None of this is fair. She grabbed her backpack with shaking hands. Mom's dying and you're making it worse. She's going to ask about Captain. What am I supposed to tell her? Tell her he's going to a good home, to a ranch where he'll have space to run, and tell her yourself, Sophia spat. I'm done lying for you. She slammed out the front door before Michael could respond. He heard her car start, heard her peel out of the driveway with more anger than he'd heard from her in years. Captain padded down the hallway, concerned by the raised voices. He looked at Michael, then at the front door, then back at Michael, asking a question Michael couldn't answer. I'm sorry, boy, Michael whispered. I'm so sorry. The dog tilted his head, not understanding. Not yet, but he will soon. Michael spent that day in a fog, hammered nails at the construction site without really seeing them, answered his foreman's questions with half his brain, checked his phone obsessively for texts from Sophia that never came. At 2 p.m. during his lunch break, he called a number from the Facebook post he'd found 3 days ago. A ranch 40 miles outside Albuquerque. The owner, Frank Cordero, needed a farm dog to help with cattle. Michael had called, explained his situation, vaguely moving, can't take the dog, needs a good home. Frank had been understanding, said he'd take Captain, no questions asked, said the dog would have a good life on the ranch, plenty of space, important work to do. Michael had driven out there on Sunday to check the place. It was legitimate, a working cattle ranch with hundreds of acres. Frank seemed kind. Older guy, weathered by sun and work, who talked about his last dog like he'd been family. It could work. Captain could be happy there, and Michael wouldn't have to take him to a shelter where he'd be stuck in a cage waiting for someone to want a scared dog with a past. Can you bring him by Friday? Frank had asked. Friday, Michael had agreed. That was 4 days away. 4 days to figure out how to tell Elena. 4 days to avoid Sophia's accusing stares. 4 days to pretend this wasn't destroying him from the inside out. Michael called Frank back during his lunch break. Confirmed Friday morning, 6 a.m. Before Sophia woke up, before Elena was lucid enough to understand what was happening. I'll take good care of him, Frank promised. You have my word. Michael ended the call and sat in his truck, staring at nothing. In the passenger seat was a photo he kept Elena and Sophia at Sophia's 8th birthday party, the day they brought Captain home. The dog was in the background of the shot, still nervous, still uncertain. But with Elena's hand on his head, beginning to trust, Michael's phone rang. The hospital. His chest tightened. Mr. Torres, this is Street Vincent's ER. Your wife is here. She collapsed at home. You need to come now. Michael was moving before the nurse finished speaking. He called his foreman, said it was an emergency, sped to the hospital with his hazard lights on and his heart in his throat. Elena had collapsed in the bathroom, passed out from pain and dehydration. Their neighbor, Mrs. Gutierrez, had heard the crash through the thin walls and used her spare key to get in, called 911, rode with Elena in the ambulance. Michael found his wife in an ER bay with IV lines in both arms, oxygen mask on her face, and that look in her eyes that said she knew she was losing the fight, knew time was running out faster than anyone wanted to admit. Hey, she whispered when she saw him. Sorry to scare you. Michael pulled a chair beside the bed, took her hand carefully. It was so small now, bones and tendons and skin like tissue paper. You didn't scare me. You never scare me. Liar. She managed a weak smile. Where's Sophia? School. I called her. She's on her way. Elena's eyes drifted closed. The morphine they'd given her was pulling her under. But before she slipped away, she asked the question Michael had been dreading. Where's Captain? Why didn't Mrs. Gutierrez bring him? He's home. He's fine. Bring him tomorrow. I want to see him. Elena, they won't let dogs in the hospital. I don't care. Her grip on his hand strengthened for just a moment. I want to see my dog, Michael. Promise me. I promise. It was another lie. One of so many. But Elena was sleeping now, her face finally peaceful, and Michael couldn't take it back. Sophia arrived 20 minutes later, her face streaked with tears, her volleyball uniform still on from the game she left early. She sat on the other side of Elena's bed and held her mother's other hand, and for a long time, father and daughter didn't speak. Finally, Sophia broke the silence. You can't take Captain away from her. I don't have a choice. You always have a choice. You're just making the easy one. There's nothing easy about this. Then don't do it. Sophia looked at him, and Michael saw his wife's strength in his daughter's face. Fight for something that matters. Fight for her. Fight for Captain. Just fight. Michael wanted to explain. Wanted to tell her about the bills and the foreclosure and the impossible math that said he couldn't save everything. But Sophia was 16 and shouldn't have to understand that sometimes loving someone means making choices that break your heart. I'm doing what's best for our family, he said. No, Sophia replied. You're doing what's easiest for you. She turned away, and Michael knew he lost something he might never get back, his daughter's respect. Elena came home from the hospital 2 days later with prescriptions for stronger pain medications and instructions to make her comfortable. The doctors had stopped talking about treatment. They started talking about hospice. Michael had 3 days until Friday. 3 days to figure out how to explain to his dying wife that he was taking away the one constant source of comfort she had left. He couldn't do it. Wednesday evening, after his first shift, Michael sat in his truck in the driveway and called Frank Cordero. "I can't bring him Friday," Michael said. "Problem?" Frank's voice was kind, understanding. "My wife is dying. She's asking for the dog. I can't take him away from her right now." Silence on the other end. "Then, how long does she have?" Michael's throat closed. "Weeks, maybe days." "Then you keep that dog with her as long as she needs him. When the time comes, you call me. I'll still be here." "Thank you," Michael managed. "My wife died 6 years ago. Cancer too." Frank's voice was heavy with memory. "The last month, our dog never left her side. Afterward, I kept thinking I should have made him eat more, sleep more, take care of himself. But he didn't want to. He wanted to be with her. And looking back, I'm grateful he was. She needed him more than he needed food or rest." Michael sat in his truck after the call ended, watching his house through tears he couldn't stop. Inside, Captain was lying beside Elena's bed. Sophia was doing homework at the kitchen table. His family was together for however many days they had left, and Michael was still planning to tear it apart. Because in 2 weeks, the bank would start foreclosure. In 2 weeks, they'd have nowhere to go except Denver. And in Denver, there was no room for a dog. The math hadn't changed. The impossible choices hadn't gotten easier. Michael went inside, kissed his sleeping wife, helped Sophia with homework he barely understood, and took Captain outside for a walk around the block. The dog stayed close, occasionally looking up at Michael with those knowing eyes. "You love her so much," Michael said to the dog. "More than I do, maybe. More than I'm capable of." Captain's tail wagged at the sound of Michael's voice, and Michael felt something crack inside his chest. This dog deserved better. Elena deserved better. They all deserved better than a man who couldn't figure out how to keep his family whole. Thursday morning, Michael called his brother and accepted the job. Told David they'd move in 10 days. Asked him to find a shelter in Denver that might take Captain. Somewhere the dog will be safe and might find a new family. "You sure about this?" David asked. "No, but I don't have another choice." "There's always another choice, Mike." "Then tell me what it is." Michael's voice broke. "Tell me how to pay the mortgage and the medical bills and save my wife and keep us together. Tell me how to do all of it, David, because I can't figure it out." David was quiet for a long time. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "I wish I knew." That night, Michael held Elena while she cried from pain the morphine couldn't touch. Sophia brought Captain up to lie on the bed with them against all their usual rules, because Elena had asked, and what did rules matter now? The four of them lay together in the dark. Michael, Elena, Sophia, and Captain, and for a few hours, they were a family. Broken and dying, but together. It was the last night they would all be in the same room. Friday morning, Michael woke at 4 a.m. to find Elena awake, staring at him in the pre-dawn darkness. "You are taking him away," she said. "What?" "Captain, you are giving him up. I can see it in your face. You've been planning it all week." Michael tried to deny it, but Elena touched his face, and the lie died in his throat. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "We're moving to Denver. The apartment doesn't allow pets. I don't have another option." Tears ran down Elena's hollow cheeks. "He's been with me through everything. I know. He loves me. I know. And you're just gonna get rid of him like he doesn't matter." "He matters. God, Elena, he matters so much. But I can't keep all of us safe. I can't save the house and pay for your treatment and keep the dog. Something has to." "Then let the house go," Elena said, her voice fierce despite her weakness. "Let everything go except what matters. Your family, Michael, Sophia, me." "Captain, that's all that matters. Everything else is just stuff. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You're just too scared to see it." She turned away from him, her thin shoulders shaking. "You've already given up on me. Now you're giving up on him too." "That's not true." "Then prove it. Keep him. Find a way to keep him." "I can't. You won't," Elena corrected. "There's a difference." Michael got out of bed before he said something he couldn't take back. He showered, dressed, went to the kitchen where Captain was waiting by the back door. The dog knew. Somehow, he knew today was different. Michael attached Captain's leash, and the dog followed him to the truck with his tail low, his ears back. Not resistant, just confused. Michael loaded him into the bed of the truck where Captain had ridden 100 times before. Sophia appeared in the driveway, still in her pajamas, her face hard. "Don't do this. I have to." "No, you want to, because it's easier than figuring something else out." Michael climbed into the truck without responding, started the engine, saw Sophia run inside, probably to tell her mother, probably to say goodbye to Captain. But Michael didn't wait. He pulled out of the driveway and drove toward the ranch, 40 miles away, his hands shaking on the wheel. Captain's confused, whimpering, drifting through the rear window. At mile marker 15, Michael pulled over, sat on the shoulder with the hazards, on his forehead pressed against the steering wheel. He could turn back, could find another apartment, could tell David the job wasn't right, could figure out a way to make it all work. But the foreclosure notice sat in his glove box. The medical bills covered his kitchen table. The math didn't change just because he wanted it to. Michael pulled back onto the highway and kept driving. Frank Cordero met Michael at the ranch gate right at 6 a.m. as promised. He was in his 60s, wearing work clothes and boots, looking exactly like what he was, an honest man offering to give a dog a good home. "This must be Captain," Frank said, approaching the truck slowly. Michael opened the tailgate and Captain jumped down, his tail between his legs. The dog looked back at Michael with those dark eyes full of questions he couldn't answer. "He's good with livestock?" Frank asked. "I don't know. He's never been around livestock." Frank nodded, understanding. "We'll figure it out together." He clipped the lead to Captain's collar. "You want to say goodbye?" Michael knelt in the dirt beside Captain and put his hands on either side of the dog's head. Captain licked his face once, still trusting, still loving, even in this moment of abandonment. "You're gonna have a good life here," Michael lied. "Space to run, important work to do. Frank's gonna take care of you." Captain's tail wagged uncertainly. Michael stood, his legs shaking. "Take care of him." "I will," Frank promised. Michael climbed back into his truck, started the engine, looked in his rear view mirror and saw Captain pulling against Frank's hood, trying to follow. The dog's barking cut through the morning air, not aggressive, just confused and desperate. Michael drove away. He made it 3 miles before he had to pull over and vomit on the side of the road. Made it 5 miles before he had to call David and tell him through sobs that he'd just done the worst thing he'd ever done. Made it 10 miles before he could see clearly enough through his tears to drive safely. He didn't go home. Couldn't face Elena or Sophia yet. Instead, he drove to the construction site and worked through his first shift in a haze. His hands performing tasks his brain wasn't registering. His phone rang at noon. "Sophia, Mom knows. She's asking for Captain. Tell her. I'm not telling her anything. You did this. You tell her." Sophia hung up. Michael left work early, drove home with his stomach in knots, found Elena sitting up in bed, waiting. The morphine made her eyes glassy, but her gaze was sharp when it landed on him. Where is he? At the ranch, with Frank. He's going to have a good life there. Did he understand? Did you explain to him why you were leaving him? Elena, he's a dog. He doesn't? He understands betrayal, Elena said quietly. He understands that the people he loved left him. Again, just like whoever hurt him before we adopted him. Michael flinched like she'd slapped him. "I want you to go get him." "I can't. We're moving in a week." "The apartment. I don't care about the apartment. I don't care about Denver. I want my dog. I'm doing what's best for her. Don't you dare," Elena's voice cracked. "Don't you dare tell me you're doing what's best for me. You're doing what's easiest for you, what lets you pretend you're in control when everything's falling apart." Michael sat down heavily in the chair beside her bed. "What do you want me to do? The bank is foreclosing. We're drowning in medical debt. I got offered a job in Denver that pays enough to maybe get us above water. But that apartment won't take dogs. So tell me, Elena, what's the right choice? Let us lose everything? Be homeless with a dying wife and a teenage daughter? Or make one impossible choice to save the rest of us? You think getting rid of Captain saves us?" Elena laughed, a broken sound. "Michael, we're already broken. Taking him away just makes it worse." They didn't speak again that day. Michael slept on the couch. Sophia stayed in her room. The house was silent except for the sound of Elena crying when she thought no one could hear. At the ranch 40 miles away, Captain spent his first night in a new barn, surrounded by strange sounds and smells. Frank had fed him, given him water, even set up a bed of blankets. But the dog wouldn't eat, wouldn't settle. He sat by the barn door, whimpering, waiting for his people to come back and get him. They didn't come that night, or the next day, or the day after that. By the third day, Captain had stopped eating entirely. Frank tried everything, different foods, hand feeding, mixing in treats. The dog would take a few bites to be polite, then return to his post by the door. "You missing your family?" Frank asked, scratching behind Captain's ears. "I understand, I do." But Captain didn't want understanding. He wanted Elena, wanted Sophia, even wanted Michael, despite what Michael had done. Because that's what dogs do. They love past betrayal, past abandonment, past logic. On the fourth night, Captain noticed the fence had a gap. Frank had mentioned needing to fix it, but hadn't gotten around to it yet. The gap was small, but Captain was determined. And grief had made him thin. He squeezed through just after midnight, his skin scraping against the rough wood, got his front paws out, then his chest, then his hips. For a moment he was stuck, but desperation gave him strength. He wrenched himself free, leaving behind fur and a small amount of blood. And then he was out. Captain stood in the darkness beyond the fence, testing the air. He couldn't see his home from here, it was 40 miles away. But dogs navigate by more than sight. They follow scent and instinct and the magnetic pull of bonds that humans don't understand. Captain started walking south, toward home, toward Elena. The New Mexico desert is beautiful and merciless in equal measure. During the day, temperatures climbed toward 110 degrees, the sun beating down on sand and rock that offered no shade. At night, temperatures plummeted into the 40 seconds, sometimes lower. The desert, bleeding away its heat into a cloudless sky. Captain walked through both extremes. His paws, conditioned by years of suburban life, walks on sidewalks, grass yards, the occasional hike on maintained trails, weren't prepared for this. The ranch was rough, but the desert between the ranch and Albuquerque was rougher. Sharp rocks, broken glass, cacti that left barbs in his pads. Within the first 10 miles, Captain's feet began to bleed. He kept walking. The highway was the most direct route. Captain stayed on the shoulder, occasionally having to dart away when cars passed too close. Some drivers saw him, a large German shepherd limping along the roadside, and slowed down. A few stopped, tried to coax him into their vehicles with food or kind words. Captain wouldn't get in. He'd been tricked into a vehicle once. It had taken him away from his people. He wouldn't make that mistake again. On the second day of walking, a woman in a Subaru pulled over and approached with a bottle of water and some beef jerky. She was in her 30s, kind-faced, wearing hiking clothes. "Hey there, buddy," she said softly, kneeling in the dirt. "You look lost. Want some help?" Captain's tail wagged weakly. He was desperately thirsty. The last water he'd found had been a muddy cattle trough 12 miles back, and he'd vomited most of it up an hour later. The woman poured water into her hand, and Captain lapped it up gratefully. She gave him the beef jerky, which he ate despite his roiling stomach. Food was fuel, and he needed fuel to get home. "Come on," the woman said, opening her car door. "I'll take you to a shelter, get you looked at. You're hurt pretty bad." She reached for his collar, and Captain pulled back, made a sound that was almost a growl, not threatening, just warning. "Don't." The woman held up her hands. Okay, I won't force you, but you need help." Captain turned and started walking again, his bloody paws leaving prints on the asphalt. "Wait," the woman called after him. She ran to her car, grabbed her entire lunch, 2 sandwiches, an apple, a bag of trail mix, and set it on the shoulder of the road. "At least take this." Captain paused, looked back at her. His tail wagged once in thanks. Then he took the food in his mouth and kept moving. The woman watched him go, pulled out her phone, and called animal control. Reported a large German shepherd walking south on Highway 83, appeared injured, refused assistance. By the time animal control arrived 20 minutes later, Captain was miles away. By day 3, the food the woman had given him was gone. Captain's stomach was a knot of hunger, but worse than hunger was the thirst. The desert in late August offered no relief. No streams, no rain. Just heat and dust and mirages that promised water but delivered nothing. Captain's tongue swelled in his mouth. His urine turned dark, then stopped altogether as his body tried to conserve every drop of moisture. His eyes sank deeper into his skull. His gums turned tacky and pale. His body was cannibalizing itself, burning through muscle mass he didn't have to spare just to keep his organs functioning. On the fourth day, he came across a rest stop. A small concrete building with bathrooms and vending machines. There was a water fountain outside designed for dogs. Captain dragged himself to it, pressed a button with his paw, a trick Elena had taught him years ago that made her laugh every time, and drank until his shrunken stomach cramped. He lay in the shade of the building for 3 hours, too exhausted to move. A family with 2 small children approached, saw him, and the mother pulled her kids back. "Don't touch it," she warned. "It might have rabies." Captain didn't have rabies. He had dehydration, malnutrition, infected wounds, and a broken heart. But he didn't have the energy to prove he was safe. When he could move again, he stood on shaking legs and kept walking. By day 5, drivers who passed him noticed he was barely moving. More people stopped. A truck driver offered him an entire fast food meal. Captain ate it, vomited it up 10 minutes later, and kept walking through his own sick. A state trooper saw him on day 6, pulled over with lights flashing. The officer was young, in his 20s, and looked genuinely concerned as he approached. "Hey boy," he said softly, "you need help." Captain's hackles raised. Uniforms, authority. They meant being taken somewhere, being put in a cage, being separated from his purpose. He growled, not loud, just a warning. The trooper stopped. "Okay, I get it. You're on a mission." He went back to his patrol car, returned with a bottle of water and a protein bar. Set them down 10 feet away from Captain. "At least take these." Captain waited until the trooper was back in his car before approaching the offerings. Drank the water, ate the protein bar wrapper and all because he was too hungry to be selective. The trooper watched him through his windshield, called animal control again. But by the time they arrived, Captain had vanished into the scrub brush alongside the highway, following game trails that ran parallel to the road. Day 7 brought thunderstorms, the kind that turned the desert from dust bowl to flash flood in minutes. Captain was walking through a dry wash when he heard the sound roar like a freight train. He looked up to see a wall of brown water rushing toward him, carrying debris and death. He ran, scrambled up the steep bank, his bleeding paw slipping on mud and rock. The water caught his back legs, tried to pull him under. Captain clawed at the earth, found perches on the root, dragged himself up inch by inch. The flood roared past below him, missing him by feet. Captain lay on the bank, sighs heaving, too exhausted to care that he was covered in mud and his wounds were now full of desert sand. When he could move, he stood and kept walking. The rain had stopped as suddenly as it started, and now the desert steamed under renewed sunshine. On day 8, Captain could barely walk. His paws were destroyed, pads completely worn away, bone visible in places. Each step was agony. His body had shed 20 pounds he didn't have to lose. His ribs showed through his coat. His hip bones jutted out. One eye was swollen shut from an infection that had started as a small scratch and spread because his immune system was failing. He should have died. Any rational creature would have laid down and died. But Captain kept walking. By day 9, he was moving less than a mile every few hours, collapsing in whatever shade he could find, dragging himself back to his feet and continuing. His breath came in rattling gasps. His heart beat erratically. His body was shutting down system by system, but his mind stayed fixed on one image, Elena. Her face, her voice, her hand on his head. Good boy, my good boy. He would get home, he would find her, nothing else mattered. On day 10, a rancher saw him and tried to shoot him. Thought he was a coyote stalking livestock. The bullet missed by inches, kicking up dirt near Captain's feet. Captain didn't have the energy to run. He just kept walking. And maybe something about his determination made the rancher lower his rifle and watch this impossible creature limp past his property. "Whatever you are looking for," the rancher called after him. "I hope you find it." Day 11, day 12, day 13, each one blurred into the next. Walk. Collapse. Water when he found it. Walk again. His world had narrowed to this single purpose. On day 14, Captain crossed into Albuquerque's outer suburbs. The desert gave way to roads and houses and traffic. His paws left bloody prints on sidewalks that made people gasp and reach for their phones. Animal Control received 15 calls that day about an injured German Shepherd. But every time they got close, Captain would disappear. Into alleys, behind buildings, through yards. He survived 2 weeks in the desert. He wasn't getting caught now. Day 15, he was in familiar territory. Neighborhoods he walked with Elena on evening strolls. The park where Sofia used to play, the route to the elementary school where Elena had taught. Captain's body was failing rapidly now. His liver was toxic. His kidneys were barely functioning. His heart was struggling to pump blood through a system that was collapsing. But he was close. So close. On day 16, he turned onto his street, saw his house, the white bungalow with the red door and the little front porch where he used to lie in the Sunday. Captain dragged himself up the driveway on legs that barely worked, climbed the 3 porch steps that felt like mountains, and lay down in front of the door to wait. His people would come. They always came home eventually. He'd wait forever if he had to. Captain lay on the porch for 3 days before anyone noticed him. The house had been empty for 2 weeks. Michael had moved his family to Denver right after dropping Captain at the ranch. The new owners hadn't moved in yet. The only sign of life was the real estate agent who came by twice a week to check on the property. It was a neighbor, Mrs. Alvarez, who saw him first. She was walking her own dog past the Torres house when she noticed something on the porch. Something that looked like a pile of rags, but wasn't. Dios mío, she breathed, moving closer. Captain lifted his head weakly. His tail thumped once against the wooden boards. Mrs. Alvarez had known the Torres family for years, had brought them meals when Elena got sick, had watched Sofia grow up, and she recognized this dog even in his current state. "Captain?" she whispered, kneeling down. "Oh, Captain, what happened to you?" The dog's tail wagged again, but he couldn't lift his head anymore. Just lay there, sides heaving, one eye swollen shut, the other looking at her with desperate hope. "Mrs." Alvarez pulled out her phone with shaking hands and called 911. "I need animal control. And maybe an ambulance. There's a dog here that's dying." Rosa Mendez had been an animal control officer for 16 years. She's seen plenty of neglected animals, plenty of abuse cases. But when she pulled up to the Torres house and saw Captain on that porch, something in her chest cracked. "Easy, boy," she said softly, approaching slowly. "I'm here to help." Captain watched her, but didn't growl, didn't resist. He was beyond that now. His body had given everything it had. There was nothing left. Rosa carefully lifted him. He weighed almost nothing and carried him to her truck. His head lolled against her arm, and she could feel every bone in his body through his thin coat. She drove straight to the emergency veterinary hospital, calling ahead to warn them she was bringing a critical case. "How long has he been out there?" the receptionist asked. Rosa looked at Captain's destroyed paws, his skeletal frame, his infected eye. "Weeks. At least." Dr. Sarah Reeves was the veterinarian on duty. She'd been practicing for 12 years and thought she'd seen everything. Then Rosa carried Captain through the door. "Jesus," Dr. Reeves breathed. She cleared an exam table immediately. "Get me a line in him now, warm IV fluids. I need blood work, x-rays, and someone check for a microchip." The staff moved with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, Captain had 2 IV lines running, oxygen being delivered through a mask, and a technician was running a scanner over his body. "Got a chip," the tech called out. "Registered to Michael Torres. This address." She showed Dr. Reeves the screen, the same address where they'd found Captain. "Call that number," Dr. Reeves ordered while examining Captain's paws. "And someone get me a map. I need to know where the nearest shelter is, and any ranches or kennels within 100 miles. The number for Michael Torres was disconnected. The emergency contact listed was Sofia Torres. Different number. Dr. Reeves dialed it while studying Captain's lab results, which were catastrophic. "Hello?" A young woman's voice, cautious. "Is this Sofia Torres?" "Yes. Who is this?" "My name is Dr. Sarah Reeves. I'm a veterinarian in Albuquerque. We have a dog here registered to Michael Torres. a German shepherd named Captain. The sound on the other end was half gasp, half sob. You found him? Yes, he was on your front porch. Sophia, I need to know what happened. Where has this dog been? Sophia's voice shook as she explained. About her mother's cancer, about the financial crisis, about her father taking Captain to a ranch 40 miles outside the city 3 weeks ago. Dr. Reeves looked at Captain, did the math, 40 miles, 3 weeks ago. Sophia, are you telling me this dog walked 40 miles to get home? Is he alive? Barely. His condition it's the worst I've seen in a surviving animal. Severe dehydration, malnutrition, all 4 paws are destroyed, systemic infection, organ failure. She paused. Even with aggressive treatment, I don't know if we can save him. Please try, Sophia begged. Please, he deserves to live. After everything he went through to get home, he deserves that. Treatment will be expensive, several $1,000s minimum. We don't have that. Sophia's voice broke. Mom's medical bills took everything. But please, there has to be something. Let me make some calls. Dr. Reeves said. But Sophia, your father needs to know. Can you tell him? I'll tell him. Sophia's voice hardened. And I hope it destroys him. Dr. Reeves hung up and looked at her staff. This dog walked 40 miles through the desert to get home to his owner. We're not letting him die now. She posted Captain's story on social media, just the basics, nothing identifying. A dog who walked an impossible distance to find his sick owner. A dog who refused to give up even when his body was failing. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within an hour, people were sharing the post. Within 2 hours, donations started coming in. Small amounts at first, $20, $50, $100. Then, larger amounts. Someone donated $1, 000. Someone else donated $2, 000. By morning, they'd raised $15, 000. By the next evening, $40, 000. The story went viral. News outlets picked it up. A journalist called asking for an interview. A documentary filmmaker reached out. But Dr. Reeves protected Captain's privacy, protected the tourist family's identity. This wasn't about fame. This was about saving a life. Captain fought through that first night, and the next day, and the day after that. The antibiotics began working on his infections. The IV fluids rehydrated his organs. His kidneys started producing urine again. His liver enzymes started dropping, but his paws were another story. The pads are completely gone, Dr. Reeves explained to her senior partner, Dr. Marcus Chen. Bone is exposed on 3 paws. There's necrotic tissue that needs to be debrided. He'll need reconstructive surgery, skin grafts, months of healing. Can he even walk again, doctor? Chen asked. I don't know, but I'm going to try. They operated on Captain's paws in stages. Cleaned the wounds, removed dead tissue, grafted skin from his flanks to rebuild the damaged pads. It was delicate, painstaking work that took hours for each paw. Through it all, Captain endured. Not because he was brave, but because he was waiting to see Elena, to complete his journey. On day 3 of Captain's hospitalization, Dr. Reeves called Sophia again. How is he? Sophia asked immediately. Improving, slowly. But Sophia, I need to talk to your parents, especially your mother. This dog walked all that way to find her. She deserves to know. Mom's in Denver. She's in hospice now. The cancer. Sophia's voice caught. She's dying, Dr. Reeves. We're losing her. Then she needs to see her dog before she goes. I'll talk to my dad. Michael Torres sat in a fold-out chair beside Elena's hospice bed, holding her hand. She'd been moved to the hospice wing of the hospital 3 days ago, when it became clear she wasn't going to recover enough to go home to the Denver apartment. Sophia had been there constantly, barely sleeping, barely eating. Michael had taken time off from his new job, his boss had been understanding. Elena's brothers had come from Texas. Her mother was flying in from Mexico. Everyone was gathering to say goodbye. Elena drifted in and out of consciousness, kept comfortable by morphine that blurred the edges of pain and reality. When she was awake, she asked for Sophia, for her mother, for water, for the pain to stop, and she asked for Captain. Where's my dog? She'd whispered that morning. Why isn't he here? Michael couldn't answer. How could he explain that he'd given Captain away? That the dog was probably living on the ranch, adjusting to his new life, forgetting about them? Except Sophia had pulled him into the hallway an hour ago and told him the truth. Captain wasn't on a ranch. Captain had walked 40 miles through the desert to get home. Captain was in a veterinary hospital in Albuquerque, fighting for his life because Michael had abandoned him. Michael had stood in that hallway and felt the full weight of what he'd done crash over him. Not just taking Captain to the ranch, but every choice that had led them here. Every time he'd chosen what was easy over what was right. Every time he'd let fear drive his decisions instead of love. Mom needs to see him, Sophia said. Before she dies, she needs to know he came back. He can't travel. He's too sick. Then we need to go to him. Michael looked through the door at Elena, who weighed maybe 90 pounds now, who could barely breathe without assistance, who had days left at most. She can't travel either. Then figure something out, Dad. For once in your life, figure out how to do the right thing. Sophia walked away before he could respond. Michael stood there alone, his daughter's words echoing. For once in your life, figure out how to do the right thing. He pulled out his phone and called Dr. Reeves. Mr. Torres, Dr. Reeves said when she answered. Her voice was professional but cold. She'd heard the whole story from Sophia. She knew what he'd done. I need to know if Captain can travel, or if we can bring my wife to him. Your wife is in hospice. She can't make that kind of trip. Then we need a medical transport, an ambulance, something. Mr. Torres, do you have any idea how much that would cost? Medical ambulance transport across state lines? It's tens of thousands of dollars. I don't care. There's money, right? From the fundraiser? Use it. Use all of it. My wife needs to see her dog before she dies. Dr. Reeves was quiet for a long moment. The fundraiser money is for Captain's medical treatment. Captain's medical treatment was because of me, because I abandoned him. So use the money to fix what I broke. Please. Let me make some calls. 3 hours later, Dr. Reeves called back. I found a volunteer medical transport team. They usually do emergency transfers for rural patients. They're willing to bring your wife here for free if we cover their gas. They can leave tomorrow morning, get her here by afternoon. Thank you, Michael said, his voice breaking. Thank you. Don't thank me. This is for Elena and Captain, not for you. The line went dead. The medical transport team arrived at the Denver hospice at 7 a.m. There were 3 volunteers, 2 EMTs, and a nurse who'd heard Captain's story and wanted to help. They moved Elena with extraordinary care, transferring her from the hospice bed to a gurney to the specially equipped van. Sophia sat beside her mother, holding her hand. Michael followed in his truck, unable to sit still, unable to stop thinking about what was waiting for them in Albuquerque. The drive took 6 hours with stops for Elena's pain medication and comfort. She slept most of the way, occasionally waking to ask where they were going. To see Captain, Sophia would tell her. We're going to see your dog, Mama. Elena would smile, drift back to sleep, her breathing shallow and labored. They arrived at Dr. Reeves' clinic at 2 p.m. The veterinarian met them at the door. He knows you're coming, she said. I don't know how, but he's been restless all morning. Like he can sense something. They wheeled Elena through the clinic in her gurney, past the curious stares of other pet owners, into the recovery room where Captain lay on a padded bed. The dog had been cleaned, his wounds dressed, his matted fur brushed out, but he was still skeletal, still obviously damaged. IVs ran into both front legs. His paws were wrapped in thick bandages. One eye remained swollen shut. But when Elena's gurney came through the door, Captain's tail started moving. Just a twitch at first, then a stronger wag. His good eye opened and fixed on Elena's face. He tried to stand, whimpering with urgency. Easy, doctor, Reeves said, putting a gentle hand on his shoulder. Don't hurt yourself. But Captain didn't care about hurting himself. He struggled against the restraints of his IVs and bandages, desperate to get to his person. Bring her closer, Dr. Reeves said to the transport team. They wheeled Elena right up to Captain's bed. She reached out with a trembling hand and placed it on his head. My boy, she whispered. My good boy. You came home. Captain licked her hand. Once, twice, a third time. His tail was wagging so hard, his whole back end was moving despite the pain it must have caused. I'm sorry, Elena said, tears running down her hollow cheeks. I'm so sorry we left you. Captain made a sound, not quite a whine, not quite a bark. A sound of pure joy and relief. He'd done it. He'd completed his journey. He'd found his person. Sophia knelt beside the bed, one hand on her mother, one hand on Captain. She was crying, her shoulders shaking. You walked so far, through so much. Why? Why would you do that? But Michael, standing in the doorway, knew why. Because Captain loved Elena with a purity humans couldn't match. Because dogs don't give up on the people they love, even when those people give up on them. Because sometimes the ones we think are least capable of loyalty show us what loyalty really means. I need to say something. Michael stepped forward, his voice rough. Captain, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for what I did. You trusted me, and I betrayed that trust. I failed you the same way I failed Elena and Sophia. The dog looked at him, and Michael saw something devastating in that gaze. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement, understanding. I don't expect you to forgive me, Michael continued, but I need you to know I will never abandon you again. Whatever it takes, whatever I have to do, you're family. You've always been family. I just lost sight of that. Captain's tail wagged once more, weaker this time. The effort of staying alert was draining him. He needs to rest, Dr. Reeves said gently, and so does your wife. They set up Elena in the private room at the clinic, something doctor. Reeves had arranged by moving equipment and calling in favors. Captain's bed was brought in and positioned right next to Elena's hospice bed. For 3 days, woman and dog lay side by side. Elena would wake from her morphine haze and reach out to touch Captain's head. He would open his good eye and wag his tail, letting her know he was still there. Sophia sat with them, reading to her mother, talking to Captain, telling stories about the years they'd been a family. Michael sat too, though he couldn't find words. Just watched his wife dying and his daughter grieving, and a dog who'd walked through hell because love was stronger than logic. On the 4th day, Elena woke more lucid than she'd been in weeks. The morphine had worn off enough for her mind to clear, though the pain was worse. Michael, she said, her voice barely audible. He moved to her bedside. I'm here. You kept your promise. You brought Captain back. No, he brought himself back. I just tried to make it right. It is right. She squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. This is how it should be. All of us together. I love you, Michael said. I should have fought harder, should have been stronger. You did the best you could with what you knew. We all did. Elena's eyes drifted closed. I'm tired, Michael. I know, mi amor. You can rest now. Tell Sophia I'm proud of her. Tell her to be brave. I will. And take care of Captain. Promise me. I promise. On everything I am, I promise. Elena's breathing changed that evening, became rattling and irregular. Dr. Reeves gently explained that these were the final stages. Hours, maybe less. Sophia climbed onto the bed with her mother, curled up beside her like she was a child again. Michael sat on Elena's other side, holding her hand. And Captain, despite his injuries, despite the pain he must have been in, pressed himself against the bed as close as he could get. Elena took her last breath at 11:47 p.m. with her family surrounding her. Sophia sobbed into her mother's shoulder. Michael bowed his head and let 16 years of love and partnership and shared history wash over him. And Captain howled, one long, mournful sound that carried through the clinic. A sound of grief that needed no translation. Then he laid his head down next to Elena's steel hand and closed his eyes. They buried Elena Torres in Albuquerque, in the cemetery where her parents were buried. Sophia spoke at the funeral, her voice steady despite tears, talking about her mother's strength and kindness and the way she loved without limits. Michael couldn't speak, couldn't do anything but stand there with Sophia's hand in his and watch them lower his wife into the ground. Captain was still in the hospital, too injured to attend, but Dr. Reeves had taken a photo of Elena's hand on Captain's head from that last day and had it framed. She gave it to Michael at the funeral. She died knowing he made it home, Doctor, Reeves said. That's worth something. It's worth everything, Michael replied. The fundraiser that had started to save Captain's life had raised over $50,000 by the time Elena died. After covering all of Captain's medical bills and the medical transport costs, there was $22,000 left. The donors voted unanimously to give it to the Torres family, to help with Elena's final expenses, to help Michael and Sophia rebuild. People are good, Michael said to Sophia as they sat in Dr. Reeves's office, looking at the check. I'd forgotten that. But they are. Some people, Sophia corrected. She still hadn't forgiven him. Michael didn't expect she would anytime soon. Captain stayed in the hospital for 6 more weeks. His paws healed slowly, the grafted skin taking hold, new tissue filling in the destroyed areas. He never walked quite right again, the damage was too severe, but Dr. Reeves and her team got him mobile. Physical therapy became part of his daily routine. A veterinary tech would work with him, encouraging him to put weight on his healing paws, teaching him to walk again with his altered gait. Throughout it all, Captain's spirit remained strong. He tolerated the pain, endured the treatments, accepted that this was what healing required. Michael visited every day. At first, Captain wouldn't look at him, would turn his head away when Michael entered the room. But Michael kept coming, kept sitting with him, kept talking to him. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, Michael would say, but I'm going to earn it, however long it takes. On day 47 of Captain's hospitalization, something changed. Michael entered the room and Captain's tail wagged, just once. But it was enough. Hey, boy, Michael said, his voice breaking. You ready to come home? Michael had made changes, turned down the Denver job, got his old position back in Albuquerque at reduced pay, found a small rental house with a fenced yard. It wasn't much, but it was theirs. He'd also started seeing a therapist, working through the guilt and the grief and the way he'd let fear drive his decisions, learning to make different choices. Sophia had decided to stay in Albuquerque for her senior year. She'd been accepted to University of New Mexico for the fall, close enough to keep an eye on her father, far enough to start building her own life. When Captain was finally cleared to leave the hospital, Michael and Sophia came together to pick him up. The dog limped out on his rebuilt paws, his gait uneven but functional. He'd gained back some weight, though he'd never be as heavy as he'd been before. The journey had changed him physically in ways that couldn't be undone. But his eyes, those dark, intelligent eyes, still held that same spirit, that same capacity for love that had driven him through the desert. Sophia knelt down, and Captain went to her immediately. Let her hug him, licked her face, wagged his tail with enthusiasm that his body couldn't quite match. Then he looked at Michael. Michael knelt too, held out his hand. I'm sorry, he said for the 100th time. I'm so sorry, Captain, but I'm here now. I'm not leaving, ever. Captain studied him for a long moment. Then he took 2 limping steps forward and pressed his head into Michael's chest. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. They took Captain to Elena's grave a week after bringing him home. Michael carried him the last 20 feet when the dog's paws started hurting too much to continue. Captain sniffed the headstone, understanding in some way that Elena was here but also gone. He lay down in the grass, his head on his paws, and made a sound that was half whine, half sigh. I miss her too, Sophia said, sitting beside him. Every single day. Michael sat on Captain's other side. The 3 of them stayed there for an hour, not talking, just being. A family held together by love and loss and a dog who's shown them what loyalty meant. 6 months after Elena's death, Michael stood in his kitchen making breakfast. Sophia was at school. Captain lay in his bed by the window, watching the backyard where birds gathered at the feeder Michael had installed. The dog still limped, still had scars, still bore the physical marks of his journey. But he was here, alive, home. Michael's phone rang. Dr. Reeves. Mr. Torres, I wanted to let you know someone's making a documentary about Captain. They've been interviewing people, gathering footage. They want to interview you and Sophia. I don't know if we're ready for that. I understand. But Michael, Captain's story is helping people. We've had 3 families reach out to say they were planning to surrender their dogs due to financial issues, but Captain's story made them look for other options. Your story, as painful as it is, it matters. Michael looked at Captain, who had turned his head to watch Michael with those knowing eyes. Let me talk to Sophia. We'll decide together. That's all I ask. After he hung up, Michael walked over to Captain and sat beside him. The dog leaned into him, a gesture that had become more common as the months passed. You're still teaching us, Michael said quietly. Still showing us how to be better. Captain's tail wagged, and Michael scratched behind his ears the way Elena used to. They agreed to the documentary. Sophia wanted her mother's story, told the woman who loved without limits, who'd fought until the end, who'd been loved in return by a dog, who'd proven that love transcends distance and logic and every obstacle nature can create. The documentary premiered a year after Captain's journey. It was honest about Michael's failures, about the choices that had led to Captain being abandoned, but it was also honest about redemption, about learning to do better, about family. After it aired, Michael received hundreds of messages. Some angry people who couldn't forgive what he'd done, but many were grateful. People who'd faced similar impossible choices, who let fear drive their decisions, who needed to know that failure wasn't final, that you could come back from your worst moments. One message stood out, from a man named Frank Cordero. Mr. Torres, I was the one who took Captain in. I've been following his story. I need you to know I looked for him when he escaped, drove the roads for days, but he was on a mission I couldn't stop. I hope you know how lucky you are to have a dog who loved like that. My wife passed 6 years ago. Our dog stayed by her side until the end too. These animals, they teach us things about love we forget as humans. Don't waste Captain's lesson. Michael read the message to Sophia and Captain that evening. We won't, Sophia said firmly. Mom wouldn't let us. Captain, now able to walk without quite as much pain, got up from his bed and came to sit between them. His tail wagged, and for a moment, Michael could feel Elena's presence in this house, with their daughter, with the dog who'd walked through hell because love was more powerful than abandonment. They lost so much, but they gained something too, an understanding of what really mattered, of what was worth fighting for, of how love, in its purest form, never gives up. Even when the body breaks, even when hope seems lost, even when every logical reason says to quit, love keeps walking. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingers with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.